Why in particular do the Women's Safety Initiative focus on the population of people that are perpetrating these incidents who aren't British nationals? Why is that your main focus?
That's our main focus because, as you know, we've got a huge immigration issue at the moment, and we are importing thousands and thousands, some could even question and possibly raise the fact that it could be millions, of unvetted, undocumented, fighting age men here in the UK. They're being put right here in the UK. You know, these men are between the ages of around 16 to 39. You know, that's the general demographic of these men. People can argue that it's women and children all they like, but we all know that the higher percentage of individuals coming over are men. And they are coming over from these countries. And how do we know? I mean, there was an interview the other day that I believe his name, I can't remember his name, but he's an Asian man and he's right wing, and he got arrested for infiltrating a migrant hotel. And
I think I heard of this guy.
Yes, he had a conversation with a migrant and asked him why he was here. And do you know what that migrant said to him? He said, "I'm here because I accidentally killed my wife." Right? So we've got this issue where people can say all they like that these people are coming from war-torn countries and they're sad and helpless, and you know, but the bottom line is he's come over because he's killed his wife and doesn't want to get, you know, killed in his own country. That is just the fact of the matter. How many of these men are doing that? Because, you know, we need to look at it this way. I looked into an FOI request that somebody sent me yesterday, and it broke down the ethnicities of rape defendants. Now, allegedly, white people make up 82% of the population, right? So that means that 18% of the population are not white. So why is 41% of rape defendants not white? That is extremely and utterly disproportionate. That is absolutely crazy. I mean, this is a huge problem that is not being addressed in the name of diversity, okay? And it's dreadful. And you know what? I will happily sit here and say that white men do it too. I know that because it's happened to me. But it hasn't happened to me nearly as much as it's happened to me by, you know, ethnic minorities or foreign nationals. Nowhere near as much. And this is what I'm trying to raise, because there are so many women that are agreeing with that statement, that there is a bigger problem at the moment with illegal immigration and undocumented, unvetted men coming into this country causing a problem. You've got to think, like I said earlier on, just because they come from Afghanistan, where, you know, where women can't speak, you know, go to the doctors, talk to their friends, basically do anything. Just because they've crossed the channel doesn't make them a whole new person, okay? We need to take this into account. We are bringing over men who come from countries where femicide, rape, and torture of women is predominant, and nobody wants to talk about it in the name of diversity. Like that, I'm sorry, but that, for me, that's just, I think it's just outrageous.
If you enjoy these kind of conversations, so why not become a Patreon? You can support me for as little as $4.99 a month. As a Patreon, you'll get advanced access to videos, articles, behind the scenes footage, and more. For just the price of a coffee a month, you can help me bring these important conversations to the world. Just simply click the link in the description or scan this QR code right here. Part of the argument for the other side of this is take away that you're racist, you're a Nazi and everything else, which is frankly just an ad hominem argument. You are attacking my character rather than attacking the argument I'm making. It's very weak and frankly absolutely absurd. What's your thoughts when it comes to people who say they are refugees and they're fleeing persecution? Do you think that if somebody is from a war-torn country and they're genuinely a refugee, that they should be allowed to come in, or do you think the exclusion should happen with those people too?
I think for some time, I think we need to consider closing our borders. Personally, I do think that. I think we've got a huge problem here We could have, we don't know who are in these asylums. People can sit there and say that that these individuals aren't terrorists, but how do we know that if they're unvetted and undocumented, right? We could have ISIS and Al Qaeda here. We wouldn't know, right? Because nobody's vetted them. So I think for now we need to consider closing our borders. That's just me personally, and people are going to probably dislike that a lot.
And if anything, Morgan, whether you agree with it or whether you agree with that standpoint or not, I respect that you do have a stance on something. I respect that, unlike a lot of the politicians and everyone else in the public space, they're so afraid to actually say what they think. And that's one thing I quite admire about yourself, is that whether people agree with you or not, you're not afraid. And whether I agree with it or not, you're not afraid to say what you actually believe. And I think it's actually quite refreshing, regardless of how someone takes it or not. So, sorry, I interrupted there. So carry on.
No, that's okay. And no, it's absolutely fine. And do you know what? In the future, there's possibility for bringing in refugees, right? But why are all the refugees men? It makes no sense. Why would you leave your country, leave your wife, leave your child in a war-torn country if you were genuinely in a war-torn country? Because to me, that screams that they don't care about the rights of women anyway. I mean, I think that's already the first red flag, right? You're not looking after your own child and your own wife. So what makes you think that they're going to come over here and look after ours? So I think that's, the first kind of point to make. I think we need to really consider mass deportations here. I know that Nigel Farage came out and said, he was going to have 5 planefuls of immigrants a day being deported. I think that's exactly what we need. If it gets to a point where we've got women, children, and families, and I say families, I don't mean single men coming over here, I mean family units, then, maybe we could consider some alternative route for them. But again, it's kind of like, why have they come here, not to their neighbouring countries? And the argument there is, sometimes their neighbouring countries are also in war. They didn't have to leave Calais. They could have stayed in Calais.
Yeah, France isn't at war, is it?
Yeah.
France isn't at war, or Belgium, or Switzerland, or Sweden, or one of the many other countries that they find themselves in. And I've heard from the news and everything else, is like, when people interview these people, they blatantly say, well, we come here because of the benefits we get. So because we are an attractive country. I don't understand how we have such a huge problem, because we're not landlocked. We are surrounded by water. So we have a very good natural blockade to protect ourselves. And the fact that we are opening, what's your thoughts? Because one of the reasons why they say we can't just deport these people, because if they have committed a crime in the UK, or they claim that they're a different religion when they get here, or they claim that they're gay, or whatever, they don't have to offer any proof. Just by simply saying, well, I'm now a Christian, I can't be sent back to my Islamic country, or I'm now gay, so I can't be sent back to my country of origin because I'll be persecuted. Then comes in the human rights. So do you think that needs to be looked at? Do you think that's a loophole which is being exploited?
It seems to be like one rule for one and none for the other. I mean, I don't know if you've seen that case where that guy's got that kid with some sort of eating problems and he won't eat chicken nuggets or something like that, so they won't send him back.
I heard of that.
I mean, this is just ridiculous. I think it's absolutely being exploited. And do you know what? I'm all for leaving the ECHR and creating our own Bill of Rights. And I think it's absolutely ridiculous that the left are coming up with this sort of narrative right now that if we leave the ECHR, that we're suddenly going to be without any rights at all, and they're acting as if the purge is going to happen, right? But that's not the case. We'd begin to create our own framework for human rights where individuals aren't, forced to kind of aren't able to use these, to their own kind of. Well, it helps them. I mean, I don't even know how to. I mean, it's utterly ridiculous. They're using our rights, our human rights, as a means and a way to exploit not just the rights but our entire system. I think it's ridiculous. I mean, let's be honest. You can say, that you're gay all you like, right? And kind of come across that way, and that may or may not be true. But you were originally in that country anyway, so it just for me it just doesn't ring true. I mean, I just think it's ridiculous. And also, if they're a devout Muslim, it's actually against their religion to be gay. So are they either gay or are they a Muslim? I mean, this is where I get a bit confused myself. And I understand that we have moderate Muslims who practice moderately, etc. And I have absolutely no issue with them. But we've got, many people using so many different excuses in order to stay in the UK, and I think it's outrageous. I think it is outrageous, and I think it needs to stop. And I think leaving the ECHR is the first step towards that direction. It's not going to solve everything. I know that the right are going to be completely on me after I say this and say, oh, well, leaving the ECHR doesn't solve a thing. Well, it will start to, right? So that's kind of, that's where we are. It will be a good step in the right direction.
One of my biggest problems with mass migration is one, I don't like that if you question it, you're considered racist or that you can lose your job and everything else. And I know that the Free Speech Union, in particular, have been doing work surrounding that, because what was considered a quite conservative point of view, political point of view a few years back, is now so politically charged that people are finding themselves either in handcuffs or being told you can't hang your own national flag. But my main point of contention is it's safety. If you don't, say for example, use the analogy of a house, for example. If you had your home and you unlocked your door and somebody walked in, they said, I'm hungry, I need somewhere to live. You decided to keep them in your house. They could be completely fine. They could be. But they also might not be. You'd want to know who this person is. Certainly if they're going to be around your children or your partner or even, your property and everything else. So what's the difference between looking after somebody's home and the safety of the family and then expanding that to looking after your country and being concerned about this? And I don't like that as soon as you question it, you are labeled as this or that and the other, when in reality, you're just concerned. Now, obviously, there are going to be some subsect to that population who are genuine asylum seekers and do need to, they've fled their country with the clothes on their back. But then it's also okay. Well, why are they traveling so far to get to the UK? And the reason for that is because of how attractive we make it, and also how difficult it is to send somebody back who even commits a crime. I mean, you said before about you would deport all foreign criminals. Now, you'd like to think that's happening anyway, but because of the ECHR, it means that if someone does commit an offence, which they would naturally get 12 months or more in custody, which would trigger an automatic deportation. As a result of the ECHR, these people are then allowed to stay in this country because they will be persecuted if they then were to return to their own country. So we have a permanent illegal migrant who has frankly used a sexual assault or an offence of rape to stay in the country. Now, we don't want that happening, because at the end of this, there's a victim. It's not, and we focus too much on the people perpetrating the crimes, and we don't think about the victims of the crime, the women, like you said, who are being taken. People are taking photos of them. People are being recorded on their commute to work. People are being dragged into whatever, and as well, I speak to a lot of prison officers, and a lot of these illegal migrants get put on a vulnerable protected ward, on a protected wing, which means there's a lot of them there. And I was told a story by a prison officer who told me that due to the prison officers not having enough staff, and due to the cultural differences in these areas, the prison officers are constantly terrified because they can't understand what these people are saying, because they speak in a native language and culturally they're put together a lot of the time. But then you also have There was a female prison officer who was actually dragged into the cell by one of these people who was there for a sexual offence. So they dragged them into the cell. They were going to do absolutely awful things to them, and it took other prisoners to actually help this prison officer because the prison staff just didn't have enough staff. So even when we house them, if we take them off the street, we house them somewhere, there's still a problem. They're still causing issues. And then you've got the thing of, well, how much are these people costing? I think Nigel Farage said it was, I don't know, maybe misquoted here, but it was a shit ton of money. Let's just say that it was a shit ton of money which is being spent. And I think a lot of the reason why people get so angry at our government at the moment is because we are seeing veterans on the street who've served the country. We are seeing being left out on the street. We are seeing people who have put into the system for their entire lives having their winter fuel allowance taken off them, and yet we're seeing somebody who arrives on a makeshift dinghy or on a rubber boat who has not had to fulfill any criteria in order to come to this country, and who gets put up in a hotel, who gets fed. There's mention of them getting technology and iPads and new clothes and everything else. Like, quite naturally, when you look at the disparity between the two of them, people are going to be fucking furious.